Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show. Discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
My name is Desiree Duffy, and today on the Books That Make You show, we are talking about books that make you step into a war zone. Imagine being a U.S. Army combat photographer during the Vietnam War, serving as an Army drill sergeant, teaching hand-to-hand combat at the Ranger School, earning a Bronze Star, an Air Medal, a Purple Heart, a battlefield commission, and commanding a signal company, and then turning all of that into a writing career. Our guest today is Marvin J. Wolf, and yeah, he did just that. He's written articles, he's co-authored books, and he even wrote a few screenplays. Now, his first mystery series debuted with the For Whom the Shofar Blows, and that has several titles in it. And The Zombie Deception is his latest book in his Chelmin and Spaulding CID mysteries. And that just came out recently. Marvin J. Wolf, hello. Welcome to the show.
Privileged to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm honored to have you. Let's start with the big question and I only took snippets of your very extensive biography and resume out. I couldn't cover everything. So, I mean, you've done so much in your career. You've been a U.S. Army combat photographer in Vietnam. Talk about how you used your experience with the military and distilled that into your writing.
Well, it's something I don't have to think about because it's all packed into the gray cell somewhere. It's a viewpoint. It's a question of viewpoint, of understanding how things work in the military, how people are supposed to behave and usually do, and then using that as a jumping off point. I should tell you that when I'm writing a novel, I don't know who else works like this, but I have lucid dreams, maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I get up and write the scene. Go back and fix it, of course, because the dream is just a dream. That's how I work. I can't explain that, but that's how it works. Oh,
that's fascinating. I want to talk about that. Let's stay with the big picture, though, for just a little bit. So being a photographer in Vietnam, I'm sorry, that's astounding to me. Can you tell us what that was like?
Yes. Like every infantryman, I had been an infantryman for 3 years or so before I became a photographer in Vietnam. But that was an infantryman in peacetime. Mm-hmm. So like every infantryman in Vietnam, it was an hours and hours of boredom punctuated by moments of sheer hell, by frightening times. And my escape hatch was the knowledge that I didn't have to be there. I could go back almost any time there was a helicopter available. So that kept me sane. I was there to get pictures, and if you're not close, you won't get the pictures. So I learned to get close. And after a while, the infantrymen accepted me. I was one of them. We had an entire division, that's 9 infantry battalions, around 20,000 men with all the supporting troops. We had artillery and we had 437 helicopters. So I flew almost every day. And my modus vivendi was I would hop in a chopper and they would put me in a door gunner's seat because a helicopter could only carry so many people. So I had a machine gun between my knees. I knew how to use it. They sent me to door gunner school for a week. That's about as much fun as a GI can have with his clothes on.
I guess so. Now,
anyway, so we get to the landing zone. If it was a hot LZ, which is to say they were shooting at us, if it was contested, I stayed with the chopper. I stayed with the gun. I did my job. I fired back at whoever was shooting at us, and I fired suppressive fire into areas where it was likely they would be shooting at us. But if it was a cold LZ, which is about 2/3 of the time, or very lightly contested, just a few snipers. I left the chopper, I left the gun, and I went into the jungle with the troops. And sometimes you would walk for days and not see an enemy. Other times you'd have to fight your way out of the LZ. What I had to understand, what you should understand, what the listeners should understand, is that it's not all beer and Skittles. You have to live with the troops. You eat with the troops, eat, you sleep when the troops sleep, you sleep on the ground. It's like being an infantryman, but with an extra 20 pounds of cameras. On the other hand, I had this mental escape valve. This happened only about 2 or 3 times. If I happened to be put with a unit whose leadership I didn't think was up to the task, it does happen, but not often, I would get out of there as quickly as I could, and nobody would say boo. If you had a sergeant who was intent on getting everybody killed, I didn't need to be there. If you had a sergeant who was too afraid to move, I didn't need to be there either. On one occasion, I'm sorry to say, I had to take over a squad because the sergeant, I was by then a sergeant myself, the sergeant didn't know what he was doing and he was afraid to admit it. But that was just once out of a couple of 100 times probably.
How does that happen? If he is in charge, but he doesn't know what he's doing, how do you segue yourself into that role?
Well, it started with me trying to advise him, saying, wouldn't it be a good idea to put out flank guards? You really think we need them? Yes. Why don't you take the left flank? So I took the left flank. And then I came across some wire. And I knew what it was. It was comma wire. Our comma wire is black. Theirs is green. We leave ours with me when we leave because we can get anything. We're a rich country. They left it. They didn't leave theirs. They used it. They picked it up. So if it was there, that meant we were around troops. We were around the enemy. I told this to the sergeant, and he said, what the hell do you know about it? I said, I've been here for almost a year now. I'm telling you, we're someplace close to a headquarters. And he said, oh, mind your own business. So we went on down the road a little bit, and the point man triggered an IED, and as they call it later, whereas we used to call it a command-operated mine. It was an artillery round hanging in a tree, camouflaged, and got himself hurt pretty bad. And the squad leader was looking around for somebody to tell him what to do, so I told him what to do.
Wow.
In all fairness to this sergeant, he was the product of something the Army called the NCO, Combat NCO course, where they took people right out of advanced infantry training and gave them 6 or 8 weeks of training in being a squad leader. And then they made them a sergeant and sent him into the field. He just wasn't ready.
Right. Now, in your writing, did you depict actual events? I mean, you're writing fiction, but are you pulling from some of your real experiences, or are you being inspired by your real experiences?
It's both. I can't very well use exactly an event that happened. But what I have come to learn is that armies are pretty much the same, whatever army you're in and whatever time you happen to be in. The men are about the same. Yes, the weapons change, the tactics might change somewhat, but infantrymen are infantrymen. You don't fight for your country, you fight for the guy next to you. You fight to stay alive, and you learn to rely on your training, and so that's always the case. Now, in the Chelmin and Spaulding CID mysteries, this is not about combat. Chelmin and Spaulding are a mismatched pair of CID investigators, Criminal Investigation Division. They are to the Army what a city detective would be in civilian life. And in the second book, the most recent book, The Zombie Deception, they come across a man in a fatigue uniform in a part of the base that they're investigating something else, and he tries to shoot them and instead gets killed. And when they take his fingerprints, it turns out he's a zombie. Turns out he's been dead for 10 years, except not really. And you know the thing about zombies is you never just won.
Mm-hmm.
So this is part, it turns out, of a gang of deserters who had gone missing in Afghanistan and have now come back to Fort Rucker, Alabama. It's a real place. It's the helicopter training center for the U.S. Army. I flew enough to be familiar with helicopters, and I love to fly. I'm not a pilot, but I have sat behind the controls a few times. Anyway, so this is a mystery about who these guys are and what they're up to. That's what it's about. It's called The Zombie Deception.
Exactly. So that's the book that just came out. I
Yes.
think you have a copy of it there. I've got the little depiction back there. Want to hold that up really quick?
I do, actually.
There you go. Perfect. That's the one to look for. So that is book 2 in the
That is book
series,
2.
in the Chelmin and Spaulding CID mystery series.
Yes.
Excellent. So not real zombies, though. These are metaphorical zombies. There's nobody eating brains, right? That's not
Correct. But if you're a cop and you take the fingerprints off a guy that killed in a shootout and you send him back to CID headquarters where they match them through the computer, AFIS as it's called, is an FBI computer. If you're in the service, you're fingerprinted, and it comes back with the name of a guy who's been dead for 10 years. A handy excuse me, a handy way of referring to him is a zombie.
I love it. Great title.
Thank you.
And as you're writing it, are you talking to people that are still there? Are you getting any expert advice or doing research to keep current with up-to-date technology?
I am doing that. I'm doing research all the time, and we're very fortunate in this time to be able to find almost anything on the internet. Of course, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Can't be sure it's true, but on the official military sites, they have an awful lot of information, including cases. Now, I didn't use a real case for this, but this story begins with 3 kidnappings. And the commanding general of Fort Rucker wants to know what the hell is going on. He also would like to find his men. It's 3 pilots who've been kidnapped. In the end, we find out why they were kidnapped. I'm not going to give it away. And why they were kidnapped and how they were kidnapped.
Excellent. It sounds exciting. Let's go back to the other mystery series because you're very prolific. You've got a lot going on. For Whom the Shofar Blows. Can you tell us a little bit about that mystery series?
Yes, that is the first book in the Rabbi Ben mystery series. Rabbi Ben is a rabbi without a pulpit. He's a roving troubleshooter, if you will. And you find out in the first book why he can't have a pulpit. He's HIV positive. He was in a cafe in Jerusalem that was bombed, and trying to help people who had been hit. He got people's blood all over them, and he had cuts from the flying glass and so forth. And the problem, of course, is if you're HIV positive, a lot of people don't want to hire you. Anyway, that's why he had to find something else to do. What he would really like to do is have his own pulpit. There are now 4 books in that series. And in the first one, For Whom the Shofar Blows, he is hired by a rabbi to find out if there is anybody in some very old... The rabbi of the synagogue discovers that they own a dozen graves in various Jewish cemeteries. And it turns out there's somebody in one. And they want to know who he is and how he got there. And that begins the story.
Oh, that's tantalizing. So, okay, now I want to go back to how you teased me in the beginning by talking about you have lucid dreams where you get your ideas. Is that how that happened? Okay, I imagine there's somebody in this grave. Is that one of your dreams? Is that how your writing technique works?
Yes, but I have to tell you that normally there's some amount of input to my mind before these dreams happen. In this particular case, I was on the board of directors of a particular synagogue in Venice, California, when the rabbi discovered that he had a safe in his office. He had no idea. He also didn't know how to open it. So they sent for a locksmith. They opened the safe, and there were 30 deeds to grave sites at 4 different graveyards, Jewish cemeteries all over Southern California. And he hired a lawyer, a member of the congregation, to go and try to find out if any of these graves had been sold. And it turned out 5 of them had, and there were people in them. So the idea for the synagogue was to find out whether or not they could now sell these grave sites, or if they had already been sold. They had no paperwork. So this became a jumping off point for me. This is the real story. But I wondered what would happen if they found a body in a grave and it wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah. That's a great premise. So when this was a real story. So did you intentionally want to flesh this out? Did you go to sleep and say, I want my brain to pick up on this and come up with something? Or does it just
It just happens. It bubbles up. I remember waking up. You don't exactly wake up. That's what a lucid dream is. You know you're dreaming, but you're still not quite awake. And sometimes you don't remember the whole dream, but I try to remember it. I make a point to wake up and saying, okay, what did I just dream? And then I have to quickly write down some notes so that I can go reconstruct a dream. Well, in this case, I had been wanting to write a book about a rabbi for some time. And I had a conversation with Rabbi Shevitz, the rabbi of that particular synagogue, whom I've known for years. And I asked him to tell me what would disqualify a particular rabbi for having a pulpit. And he came up with 3 things. And one of them was having some dread disease, communicable disease. Well, what could be worse at that time than HIV?
Right.
And so that was my jumping off point. And then when I was dreaming about how you would find out whether there was somebody in this grave if the graveyard had been sold or if it was closed to new burials. And so that became the basis for the book.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome.
And then you usually have to try to find a villain. And I don't want to give too much of this away, but there is a woman is murdered early in this investigation for the reason that the killer thinks that she is helping the rabbi solve this crime, solve the crime of who's in the grave. And so she is killed because of that. As it turns out, she wasn't doing it at all. And in the title, For Whom the Shofar Blows, is a double entendre. It describes the method by which this woman was murdered, which after you're halfway through the book will tell you who killed her. And also, it's a play on words. It's a play on Hemingway's book, For Whom the Bell Tolls. All of the book titles in the series are similarly created.
I like it. You actually you look a little bit like Ernest Hemingway with the beard.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So, okay, that's excellent. I want to segue over to your photography books because you've done that as well. Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, one of the books is called The Grove. When I was in Korea, still in the Army, there was a little grove of trees near my quarters on the base. And I used to go out early in the morning or late in the afternoon as it started to sun. And I noticed there was a flock of magpies in that tree. Mm-hmm. The magpie is considered a magical bird in Korea. If you see one magpie at dawn, one, not more than one, it's a sign of danger. You should beware. And the reason is that magpies normally travel in pairs. They're couples. They mate for life. There are a lot of stories about magpies in Korean folklore. And so along with these pictures, which are pictures of magpies, taken at all hours of the day and night, taken against a full moon, taking off, magpies roost at night in a tree. And they spend most of their time on the ground looking for food. Another book, it's a book of photos of children all over the world. I would have to take a moment. It's been a few years since I did this. Anyway, it's pictures of children taken in Japan, Korea, Vietnam, the United States, all over the United States. It's about 30 years worth of pictures of children, all doing the same thing. And play, of course, is the work of children.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the title, but I'm not sure. Another picture book, this one is only available as an ebook. On my way, I was out of the Army for 3 years and came back in. And on my way back to Fort Benning, it happened to be March 9th, 1965. I had a reason to drive through Selma, Alabama on that day, not having any idea what was there. That was the day when Martin Luther King Jr. and about 10,000 Americans were there trying to register to vote. And the local police and local political establishment was trying to keep them from voting. And it came down to a march to Montgomery. The day before I got there, the first time they tried that march, they'd been beaten bloody. That was Bloody Sunday. So when I got there, there were all these people on the streets. I didn't know exactly what was going on. And then I saw a bunch of media people. So I drove through the town. I parked on the other side of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I walked back into the town and started taking pictures. And those pictures, I developed the 3 rolls myself, 3 rolls of negatives. And then I didn't print them or see them for almost 40 years.
Oh, wow.
They were misplaced. I have too many pictures. And about 5 years ago, I came across them, turned them into slides, and made a book out of it.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. What a great story. I bet you those pictures are just amazing too, right?
Well, I wish they were more amazing. They were pretty good, but I was just starting out as a photographer. But there were some pretty interesting pictures there. Yes.
Well, I bet you that was, it was probably incredible being a part of that slice of history too.
It is. It is. I was very surprised when I found those rolls of film. I thought they had been gone forever. You know, you move around a lot in the Army and stuff gets lost.
Yeah, I bet. How about advice? Do you have any advice for either people in the military who might want to become a writer or just to aspiring writers in general? What would you like to say to them?
Writers in general, if you want to get rich, become a stockbroker.
I say something very similar. I say go into investment banking.
Yes.
Good point.
The fact of the matter is that the most successful fiction writers in our country, with 3 or 4 notable exceptions, have all had to keep their day job. Most of them teach writing. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some notable exceptions, but these were guys, there are conservatively 55 or 60,000 titles published in the United States. That doesn't include Bibles or cookbooks every year. And so having to break through that noise is pretty difficult. I wouldn't bet on anybody doing it. It's possible, but unlikely.
Yeah.
So don't give up your day job and write for the sake of writing. Write because you love to write. Write because you have a story to tell. And write about what you know. and you'll probably know more things than you really. Even if you're just a guy who's trying to quit smoking, you know about smoking. Write about smoking.
That's great advice. Do it because you love it, and doing it like you did, where you're pulling from your experiences in your past and it becomes a passion. And you are breaking through that noise, Marvin, just by being on the show and by reaching your fan base. And I think too, you're narrowing in on a certain audience, people who like mysteries, people who like military, people who like this genre are going to gravitate to you. So why don't you take this opportunity to tell those people where they can find out more about you, find you online, your website, find your books, etc.
My website is www.marvinjwolf.com. That's my full name, Marvin J. Wolf. The J is the letter J. I also have a profile on Amazon, and almost all of my books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, whatever you might get your books.
Fantastic. Marvin, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
A privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead and hold up the zombie deception again, so people can see exactly what that beautiful cover looks like, so that they can go to the store and buy it. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here today on the Books That Make You show. You can find out more about us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Sign up for our newsletter, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, all of my book buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.